Hey Hari, nice to see you. How are you?
Great to see you, Nihar.
Yeah, how's AI world going for you?
It's we're all still getting used to the new name,
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly.
It's been a great conference, actually. Lots of great meetings, lots of energy with customers, lots of energy with partners like yourself. One thing is becoming more and more clear. This AI thing is very real now.
Right.
It's real. It's very real for a lot of customers, and the conversations are getting a lot deeper. The investments are getting a lot more interesting, and more people are saying, you know what, I'm not going to be sitting on the sidelines anymore. I'm going to start doing some things, And the people who started doing these things a year or two ago now are sort of broadening the scope of what they're doing. So it's getting really interesting.
Yeah, we saw Larry say the tagline was AI is going to change everything, right? So, well, we know each other well, but would you mind introducing yourself for the audience that may not know you?
Yeah. Sure. So Hari Sankar, I run product management, product strategy for the EPM business here at Oracle. This is my second stint at Oracle. In my first stint, I used to be a lead product manager for the database business for a number of years. And then these days I work in applications. So EPM and ERP, as you probably know, have been coming together in very meaningful ways. Of course, that not to take anything away from the work we do with non-Oracle ERP customers, that remains a very important priority for us in the EPM business. But for those customers that are investing in ERP and EPM together, there's a lot of cross-pollination, there's a lot of blurring the boundaries across the two areas happening. So while my primary responsibility is EPM, I'm also doing a lot of work with the ERP team as well.
Yeah, when we talk to customers that aren't as familiar with everything Oracle offers, a lot of times they think of Oracle as an ERP, right? Yeah. Rather than some of the other solutions that are out there. So how do you, simplify the explanation of the difference between ERP and EPM, what those boundaries are?
Yeah, the boundaries, as I said, get blurred every day, right? So if you think in terms of, I was at a panel discussion earlier today, a very nice panel of 3 EPM customers, Oracle as well as 2 other customers. One of them said, look, I think of ERP as accounting, EPM as finance. That may be oversimplifying things a great deal,
yeah.
But I think that may be a very simple working definition, because if you think in terms of budgeting, forecasting, decision-making, management reporting, all of those things are EPM. ERP is the foundation, it's the foundational set of applications, but I think people in finance see EPM as the face of the work being done in ERP. And increasingly, with AI, a lot of what was done by people using ERP is already starting to get automated, and I think over time a great deal of it will get automated, and it'll become continuous, not just teed up to be done at the end of the month or end of the quarter. As it becomes continuous and automated, the purpose of ERP then becomes, how do I feed continuously clean, curated, dependable data in near real time for decision-making purposes? And decision-making is where EPM sort of comes in.
Right. So, the EPM platform has evolved over time. PPCS back in 2014 was kind of the first foray that at least I know of in the EPM cloud world. What's happened since then, and what are some of the newer things that are coming out?
Yeah, it's been a great 10 plus years for the EPM business in the cloud, because as you know, we started with planning in the cloud, and then we added financial consolidation, we added reporting, we created the full suite. And that strategy of delivering a full suite of connected applications built on the common platform remains consistent, right? We are very clear about that strategy. Back in the day, 10 years ago or 10 plus years ago, when we got started, people said, oh, it's the best of breed. We're going to go with one vendor for planning, another vendor for consolidation, yet another vendor for reporting, kind of thing. We were telling people, look, it doesn't make sense. And 5-6 years later, people started to see the wisdom of what we were doing. They said, you know what, there are clearly synergies across these different areas within EPM. Importantly also, most customers saw that, in the cloud, innovation is moving at a much faster pace. We're not talking about 3-year update cycles like we did with the on-prem software.
Right.
We're talking about 3-month or 1-month update cycles. And when you do that, it's crazy to be trying to connect across multiple vendors' solutions to make things work, to test things and ensure compatibility and ensure correct behavior multiple times a year. So, it's just coming back to what people do with, consumer software. Like, nobody buys a spreadsheet software separately from word processing software.
Sure.
You're probably not old enough, but I'm old enough to have lived in the day when we did that.
Yeah.
But these days everybody buys a suite because suites always win in terms of not just cost economies, but also in terms of functional synergies. And that's happened with EPM. But back to your question on what's new, the last few years what's new is all about those two letters, AI. Because AI is, started out initially as a much hyped up technology, and customers said, yeah, this is intellectually interesting, but not yet kind of thing. But I think in the last 3 years, thanks to all the buzz and excitement created by generative AI, AI has become a lot more real, a lot more quickly than people had imagined. Because AI has been around for a long time, as we all know. But what's happened in the last 2 or 3 years has collectively had a much bigger impact than what happened in the 20 years prior, right? So I think what's new with EPM is the infusion of AI into EPM, into the finance function in general, and EPM in particular. I think is going to make the next 5 years really, really interesting for people in this space. Because I think, people say this a lot, but it's very real now. I think finance is going to get reimagined like never before. Sounds like a cliche, but it's true, because when you dig into the details and take a look at what we mean by reinvention or reimagination with the help of AI, we're talking about things that are very real and things that have the potential to redefine roles in finance, rethink how work is done, and take value proposition to a whole different level.
So, you're right. I think we've kind of passed the Turing test, so to speak, right? Where now interacting with AI feels more human-like. For finance, though, it seems like it's a different type of animal just because of the structured nature of the data. So how does AI get applied to finance versus, what it would be for something like how to make a recipe for chicken, right? So there's certain ways that you use generative AI that's probabilistic, that's more descriptive, but for finance it tends to be very deterministic. So how does AI get applied to that discipline?
Yeah, no, good question, because finance is all about numbers, and finance is all about the accuracy of numbers. Because you talk to finance people, they'll say 99% right is still 1% wrong, right? I mean, so that's the right way to think about numbers in the finance context. So, for a lot of, people who look at AI for the first time, they see generative AI as the face of AI. But generative AI is obviously, as we all know, is one aspect of AI. And then there is the data science-oriented AI, the predictive AI, which is still at core a very much numbers-oriented set of techniques, right? It came out of the quant side, so it's very much numbers-oriented. So in the finance context, what we've always believed is, look, it's like the left brain and the right brain. You have to put the two together.
Sure.
So if generative AI is about the softer side of finance, the harder side of finance is predictive AI. The two come together, then you start to see interesting things. Because, we clearly don't want things like hallucinations or guesses in terms of numbers, but the generative AI part is very interesting for narratives. It's very interesting for explaining things in simple language to finance users who are not necessarily data science experts, right? Most of them are not. But they can get a lot of value in what they do from data science. So the generative AI has got its role, but we understand its limitations. So this is where, when we put this to work, we sort of use the right piece for the right job. But I think there's a lot of potential here. So, simple examples, you have a complicated multivariate prediction model that's data science oriented, grounded in data science. But the output of that prediction model needs to be explained for finance people.
Right.
And you and I know well that finance people are a skeptical bunch. You give them the output of a most sophisticated model, they'll say, great, but can you tell me how this works? And if you can explain to them how it works in simple terms, saying, hey, there are 16 factors that go into this model, but in this particular prediction, there are 4 that are predominant. And these are the 4, and here are the weights associated with those 4 most influential factors. If we start talking like that, and if those 4 factors are the ones that make intuitive sense to them, they will buy into it, then they will adopt. So I think there is a lot of interesting work we can do by bringing the quantitative side and the qualitative side together in the context of a use case like this. And then what's really exciting is, we talked about predictive AI, we talked about, the generative AI. In the last year and a half, we're talking about agents and what we can do with agents. And agents have the ability to sort of expand the scope of what we can do with, predictive and generative AI. So in terms of looking at key steps of processes or entire processes as a whole, and then how can we sort of reimagine how those processes run? How can we automate parts of it? Some of it can be fully automated, like for example, you're doing a reconciliation, maybe big subsets of reconciliations can be fully automated, but some of it may not be fully automated, like a plan revision.
Sure.
We probably don't want to automate it. We want to put a human in charge of it, in control of it. But the human in the loop can benefit a great deal from these algorithms, from these explanations, from this progressive contextual analysis that goes from looking at something interesting to digging into it to understand it at a deeper level, to making a decision based on that insight, which may tell you something about a problem or an opportunity. So I think agentic AI is going to help reimagine big parts of how work gets done in finance. And through that process, I think it has the potential to, everybody is concerned about what will happen to jobs. Yes, it'll impact certain jobs, but it'll also enrich a lot of jobs. So I think we're excited about the enrichment part of it in the EPM context.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to happen. We had this conversation when the cloud happened, right? When
of course.
there was quite a bit of legacy infrastructure that needed to be maintained by customers, and people seem like, jobs still grew since that time, right?
Yeah.
When the calculator came out, I'm sure people had the same kind of fear.
Same fear.
What do you suggest to customers that are finally saying, okay, you know what, we've played with AI, we think it works, how can we apply this to our business? What are some ways to get started with that?
Yeah, I think, the fear is real. Okay, so we cannot assume the fear away. And most of our customers are not assuming the fear away. They're saying, hey, look, the concerns are real. There are some cultural issues that we need to deal with inside the organization. Let's not ignore them. It may be the coolest technology, but I think we still need to get people to buy into it, see the value of it. So I think we take those concerns seriously. Our customers take those concerns seriously. But I think there is what needs to get, technology in itself isn't what will get people excited.
Right.
But the potential of this technology to change the nature of work, to change the level of impact that people can have on the organization, that's what needs to be messaged appropriately, and that's what will get people excited. Because finance people, let's take FP&A as an example. In FP&A, if people are honest, if I ask an FP&A guy, what do you do all day long? They will say, I crunch numbers. That's what they do. But I think number crunching, a lot of it can be done well, in fact, can be done better by machines than by human beings. So if we take away the sort of the grunt work part of number crunching and give it to machines, then the analysis part, the decision-making part, the interpretation part, the collaboration part, that can be done by people, because people really excel at that. So the finance jobs get reframed and it gets broadened. So an FP&A guy, instead of being just the number cruncher for the rest of the business, if he or she starts becoming the strategic advisor to the rest of the business, where they start to think not just about numbers in a spreadsheet, but also about the bigger picture of how does this play out for real in the context of my business. Okay, we want to sell more, but can we actually make it? And in order to sell more, how do we get customers to buy more? the sales side of it, the marketing side of it, the manufacturing side of it, whatever applies in a given business context, if they start thinking more broadly and start factoring those considerations into the recommendations or the suggestions they make to the rest of the business, then they start to be seen as people who are influencing decisions and impacting decisions, right? Because we've always believed, some customers were quick to see it, some customers were slower to see it. We always said, look, financial decisions are done well when you look at not just financial data, but also operational data, because oftentimes operational data is the leading indicator of financial performance, right? I mean, for instance, very simple example, in my everyday work, in my SaaS business, I'm forecasting revenue. In order to forecast my revenue well, I need to be looking at usage, not just at financial metrics like bookings and renewals and all of that. I need to be looking at usage, because if usage is high for a given customer, they will renew. If usage is not so high, guaranteed they're going to renew or cancel. They're going to renew at a lower level or cancel altogether, right? So that's the leading indicator. I need to be looking at that if I want to sort of predict revenues and renewals well. The same sort of examples exist in every customer's business, right? So they need to be looking at leading indicators, which are operational metrics. And when finance people start looking at operational metrics and start getting comfortable with the operational side of the business, then they're no longer just finance people, they are broadening their role into general management. And that's an opportunity that previously wasn't available to most finance people. Now I think it's becoming increasingly clear that finance has to play that role. And that's a much more fulfilling role rather than just understanding and interpreting accounting rules, for example.
Yeah, they can maybe put their hard-earned degrees to better use than rather.
Many of them have MBAs, but they've forgotten the other parts of their MBA and just focusing on accounting or calculation rules.
Sure.
Yeah.
What do you think the major shift has changed or I guess, what do you think has been the reason why there's been this siloed nature of looking at the business from finance and operations traditionally? And obviously we know the solution now could be AI, but why has that existed for so long?
I think, part of the problem is work has been so hard. Because for people, look, if I'm in FP&A, it's my responsibility to tell the rest of the business how we are doing. Where do we stand today in terms of revenues? What does it look like today? What is it likely to look like come end of month, end of quarter? If that's a job that takes 150% of your time or 120% of your time, you have no time for anything else. I mean, it's all fine to talk about cross-functional collaboration, but people need to have the bandwidth and the time to do that. If you're spending all your time sort of dumping data from a bunch of different systems, pouring them into these custom-crafted spreadsheets, trying to run these models, and if you're always late in producing that management report, you have no time for stepping outside. That reality is an important part of why things have been siloed. The other part of it is, if I go and talk to a supply chain guy, they need to see value in what I'm telling them. And I cannot add value if I don't understand that part of the business. So the desire to sort of stretch has been less because, by nature, functional areas run in silos. The level of trust, the level of cooperation has been somewhat lacking. But I think the technology can be a great enabler of that by providing you the perspective from the supply chain point of view. Because if I'm just sitting there saying, I want 20,000 more widgets produced, why can't you do that? It's a tough conversation because I'm not looking at it from your point of view. I'm just seeing what I want and I'm demanding that of you. But if I start to see that from your perspective, then I see you have real constraints in terms of production capacity or supplier capacity. Right. Then I want to sit down with you in a problem-solving mode to see what can we do to sort of ease this. Maybe we go find an alternate supplier. That may not have an impact right this quarter, but 2 quarters from now it may have an impact. If I start to understand your issues better, then I start to collaborate better with you, then you start to respect me more. Then clearly we are doing our bit to sort of break these silos down.
Yes.
I think that'll start to happen. So the nice thing about AI is by bringing data from outside of my own silo, it's giving me visibility into how you're running your part of the business. So then there is greater opportunity for collaboration and greater opportunity, greater likelihood that that collaboration is going to be more successful actually.
These implementations, especially around ERP and EPM, tend to be significant investments for customers. Are you finding that due to this new found role with AI that the decision making needs to be at a higher level to bring everybody together from the beginning, or can they start in a specific department or use case rather than having to go all at once or at a higher level in the organization?
I mean, there are some customers who are very fortunate in the sense that there is top-down sponsorship of these initiatives. Not everybody is in that situation, right? If your CEO or CFO has already bought into it and says, hey, go make this happen, that's a very nice place to be in, but not everybody is in that situation. And even when you're in this situation, you still need to get the people to buy in. The cultural issues that we talked about earlier are very real. So our advice always is, it's great to think big, but often start small. Create a small, visible piece of success, and then get people to see that success, get people to buy into it, and then if I respect your opinion and you've been part of a successful AI pilot, you come and tell me, hey, this thing is real, it's actually made my life a lot better. Then I sort of have a higher level of belief in the potential of this thing. Then I don't think of this as something that's going to take my jobs, as something that's just a new shiny toy that's going to go away. Look, transformation fatigue is a very real thing in most businesses, right? I mean, we've talked about implementation of on-premises ERP was a transformation that was supposed to change the world. It didn't. And then going to the cloud was yet another transformation. So we've had digital transformations, right? The internet transformation. So AI is yet another transformation that's coming along. So people have, long memories. They have these transformation nightmares, and they say, yeah, this is what I heard 10 years ago, and fundamentally it didn't change anything. So you need to convince people sometimes why this is actually going to have a different level of impact than what we talked about 5 or 10 years ago. And that needs to be done not just through conceptual conversations, that has to be done in the using real projects that may be smaller in scope, may involve fewer people, may involve not even an entire function, but a small part of a function. So we tell people, for example, in the EPM context, to make it real, we say, hey, get started with insights. Insights are a very nice on-ramp into the big, scary world of AI, right? Because insights, we're not forecasting anything with insights. All we're doing is looking at data, looking for patterns, and telling you some interesting things, a variance, an anomaly, or an outlier, or a bias, or something like that. And that's something you could have found on your own, but it just takes more time and manual effort to find that insight. If I can find that for you and give it to you, then I'm giving you an opportunity to sort of understand that insight better and take action on it sooner rather than later. Then that's a nice way to get people sort of introduced to the potential of these AI-based technologies. And then as they see value there, I can slowly introduce you to maybe doing a few predictions using these prediction models. And those predictions may be initially very simple predictions using just time series data, right? Hey, here's how I can take into account seasonality in your expenses or seasonality in your revenues. And if I start to understand that, okay, this model is doing a nice job of factoring in seasonality, which I had to, which was a hard thing for me to do manually. And it's also looking at 3 or 5 years worth of history as opposed to just the last quarter or the last year. Then they start to see value. So you go from insights to, simple forecasts or predictions using time series data to more complex forecasts and predictions that use multiple factors. And then these multiple factors, you can introduce external factors, operational factors, things start to get increasingly more sophisticated. And then perhaps you go into a process that's very important for your company, like cash forecasting. And if I can apply predictions in the context of cash forecasting, you see a different level of value. So there's scope for progressive expansion. And as you progressively expand the scope, you're bringing more people into the fold in terms of users. I think that's typical winning formula for most customers. Some may be able to do big bang projects because they have the sponsorship and they have the expertise. And keep in mind, you have to get buy-in from people, you have to get adoption, and you have to get people to acquire these skill sets.
Right.
Look, we don't need PhDs in data science, but even understanding how something works and intelligently making use of it, and even prompting, writing decent prompts that actually get the job done, is not something that everybody knows.
Sure.
And you have to get them sort of progressively get better at this by giving them these incremental opportunities to grow the scope of what they do with AI. I think the good news is we have a lot of adoption today. 3 years ago we were talking about this and it was conceptually appealing to people. People said, yeah, but not for me, not yet, kind of thing. We have doubled the number of customers that are working with AI in the past 12 months.
Wow.
So it went from roughly a sixth of our customers using some form of AI, whether it's predictive or generative AI, this time last year, to a third of our, I'm talking about the mid-size and above size of category of customers. A full third of them are using some AI capability in the EPM context. And I think when I talk to you next year, I think this number is going to be above 50%.
Okay.
Because this morning, I was at this AI and EPM customer panel session. We filled the room. And the stories from 3 customers were interesting and compelling, and they talked about their journey. They took on and addressed some of these real questions that you were asking in terms of, okay, are people ready for this? What are the use cases? Do I have the right data? Do I have clean data? Do I have enough data? They took on these questions and said, hey, look, you don't have to boil the ocean and solve all of these problems in the large before you start getting the benefit of AI. You can start small and you can solve some of these problems in the context of that sort of carefully scoped problem, and then grow your way to problems with larger scope. So I think our customers can be very pragmatic in how they do this, and we have, I said a full third of our customers are using AI in some form, and we've helped a good subset of those customers with these kinds of questions. So we have a program called IPM Assistance Program, where we work with customers and we help them with not just technical questions related to configuration, but also other questions related to what use cases should I be starting with, and do I have the right data, and how should I get my users up to speed in getting comfortable with this kind of thing. I think it's, partners like yourself, you provide a lot of those services as well. And as Oracle, we are also making an investment to sort of supplement what you're doing to help customers in this journey. And what's also helping a great deal is through forums like Oracle Cloud Customer Connect, these customers, these 1/3 of customers who are doing something, a good subset of them are starting to tell their stories. Here's what I did. If I were to go back and do this again, here's what I would do differently. Right. Those kind of stories are, because something coming from a peer is always more impactful from something coming from a vendor or an implementation partner, because they always think that we have an agenda. Often we do. Yeah. But the peer group messaging is starting to be out there, and I think it'll get more pervasive in the next 6-12 months, and I think that's going to accelerate adoption for the 2/3 of the customers that still haven't started to use it.
Okay. So I know we've talked a lot about finance. Are there other areas around the Oracle ecosystem besides finance, accounting, for instance, or HR, supply chain? I know you've got products that address all of these departments across companies. So what are some of the other places that you guys are focused on in Oracle?
Yeah, one thing that's, it's a very good question. Before I get to that question, one thing that's different about how Oracle is approaching AI compared, because if I'm a customer, everybody's talking about AI. Yeah. Everybody's got slides, everybody's got demos, everyone's talking about AI. One thing that's interesting and differentiated about how Oracle is doing AI is we are building AI not as a bolt-on external technology, we are building it into the platform and exposing it in the natural context of process flows and application flows. And we're very intentional about this. We took the decision to do this because it's a slower approach, but it's a winning approach over time in our thinking. The reason is AI needs to be contextual for it to be useful. And the context is the application context, the user context, the use case context, the security context. All of that is available only when you build it into the platform. And the platform is, 2 levels of platform. A lot of AI is available in a layer that's common across all of Oracle's applications, ERP, EPM, supply chain, HCM, and so on, right? So the AI layer for applications is a horizontal thing that's made use of by every application stack or every application pillar within Oracle. And then, more importantly, it's also built into the OCI platform that we all build our applications on. So through that process, we can ensure scale, we can ensure performance, we can ensure security and governance. All of those things are very, very important for finance, because in the finance context, you can deliver functionality, but if that functionality is to be trusted and adopted, we need to make sure of governance and security. And one of the questions that I was talking to them about the planning agent and the cool work that we're doing with the planning agent. The first question from my FP&A contact at a customer was, "This is great, but will this planning agent be able to access all of the data, or how do you manage that process?"
Right.
It's a very real question, very important question, right? So back to your other question. So that's how we're building it. And as part of that, we also took the intentional decision to give all of these capabilities included as part of the EPM suite and as part of the ERP suite, as part of the HCM. It's not a separately charged line item.
Okay.
It's included as part of the customer's subscription, because we think this is going to benefit everyone. And we want to make it easy for everyone to consume this without concerns about, okay, how do I, if you talk to some other vendors, they'll talk to you about, okay, the first 200,000 tokens are free. After that, we start charging for this. And the guy in finance is scratching his head saying, okay, what's a token and how do I estimate how many tokens I need? So we wanted customers not to worry about all of that. We said, it's embedded, it's included, it's available, start using it, kind of thing, right? So now back to your question on, yes, the answer is yes. Oracle is delivering AI capabilities in every functional area, in ERP, in human resources, in supply chain management, in the front office. Because, in the finance context, we talk about 2 or 3 things as the value drivers for AI, right? Automation, intelligence, and then the ability to drive decisions, and increasingly in collaboration with other functional parts, right? And some of these value elements are more dominant in one functional area versus the other. For example, in finance, the decision-making part of it, or the predictive forecasting part of it, is very dominant on the EPM side. In human resources, it may be less about that. It may be more about automation. It may be more about assisting people with what they want to do, simplifying tasks, enriching certain tasks. For example, if you want to create a job description, generative AI can create a nice first pass of that job description. So it's sort of assisting them in that process, right? In that authoring process. In the front office, the potential of AI is maybe simplifying and enriching the customer interaction without having to wait on line for a human agent to take your call, right? But every area has got its use cases, and Oracle is creating pervasive use cases across all of these areas. And the interesting thing is, over time, these agents are going to be, this is not going to be happening right away, but over time, there will be agent-to-agent interactions to get work done across multiple pillars. So today, we can see this in the context of ERP and EPM, which are very adjacent, highly connected pillars. So as an example, on the accounting side, there is the ledger agent, which is automating a lot of what is done manually on the accounting process, helping to make accounting a more continuous process, more automated process. And the planning side will definitely benefit from that, because the data, curated, continuous, clean data that the planning agent needs can come from the work, can build on the work done by the ledger agent.
Right.
And similarly, there are natural connections between the ledger agent and the reconciliation agent. So this is definitely something that is not just for finance, it's across the board. And similarly, we talk about forecasting. In forecasting, we need to get data from the pipeline,
Sure.
sales pipeline. And there are agents, there are AI capabilities in the front office that will help us sort of streamline and automate the process of picking up pipeline data to help with financial forecasting, not as a batch process, but as a continuous process and as an on-demand process. For example, when you're looking at a potential revenue gap, you may have some natural questions about how is the pipeline for this part of the business looking.
Right.
And in that context, if you're able to go out and get real-time data that tells you the current state of the pipeline, then your understanding of the problem becomes that much richer.
Yeah. I mean, this interconnectivity, or maybe this blend of sales and finance and accounting, I mean, this is what executives care about when they're trying to make decisions, because they need input from all these different areas. But you mentioned that it's available for free in the platform. We can get started now, or maybe in the near future. If I'm a customer looking at Oracle offering so many different ways to use AI across so many different products, how do I know if I need to build my own agent, or if I can use something that's out of the box? What are the differences between those two approaches, and when does it make sense to leverage maybe database 23 or database 26 AI and start building there versus start beginning to build something within the SaaS application?
Yeah, for most customers, our advice is start with embedded agents. Most customers may not even start with agents. They may start with other capabilities that are simpler, like insights and so on. But when you're ready for agents, start with embedded agents, because a lot of thought goes into creating these embedded agents to ensure that they work horizontally across different types of customers, across different industries and so on, right? So embedded agents also have a lot of work gone in to ensure that they understand the finance context, they understand and provide the right level of security and all of those things that we talked about. So embedded agents is the right place to start for, I would say, nearly 100% of our customers. But as they get more sophisticated in their use of embedded agents, you may want to start sort of configuring these embedded agents better to suit your specific needs. And again, you're not creating custom agents, but you're using, say, the AI Agent Studio to create, to tap into an interface to get different types of data, perhaps, that may not be part of the embedded horizontal agent.
Okay.
Right? So for a customer, for a consumer-oriented business, maybe weather data is really important.
Right.
But weather data is never going to be built into the EPM system, right?
Yeah.
We don't think of it as part of EPM data. So maybe you can extend the forecasting part of the planning agent by creating an interface that goes to an existing API to pick up weather data and include that as part of your prediction model, for example. That's a simple extension, but it's a very useful extension for certain types of companies. And weather data may be useful for certain companies, GDP data may be useful for other companies, or data that is very market specific, point of sale data that is very market specific may be a very important input for your forecasting in or merchandise planning in a certain retail setting or something like that. So we would say start using those extensions. And those extensions can be built by customers or can be built by partners like yourself for certain types of customers. And that's a nice way to extend the power of the agent. And I think creating completely custom agent, especially in the finance context, I would think for most customers is probably a couple of years out.
Okay.
I think they need to get up the learning curve. They need to get the confidence. They need to get the skill sets. Before that, I think there's a lot of value to be gained by using embedded agents. And we have we talked about a handful of agents at this conference, the planning agent, the reconciliation agent, the profitability and cost management agent. But there is a pipeline of a lot of other areas where we are doing interesting work. So for the next couple of years, I think we are going to be delivering continuous innovation in terms of agentic capabilities as well as agents. So I think most of our customers will benefit a great deal by knowing and understanding what we're doing and starting to use them in a sort of a phased manner before they're ready or before they need to start doing custom work of their own. But this time next year, I think some early adopters will start to play with the AI Agent Studio to understand what they can do, and maybe they will start building some simple things, and partners like yourself, you'll go help them. But I think a lot of value can still be tapped by just using the embedded agents that we provide them.
Just out of curiosity, you mentioned this earlier, a third of your customers have already adopted some form of AI.
Yeah.
Are there any specific industries or verticals that you see where it makes sense to do that earlier versus others where they may be the more of the laggard, maybe due to security concerns or due to maturity in the organization?
Yeah. So, interestingly, it is actually quite horizontal. The adoption patterns that we see are very horizontal, very industry agnostic. Initially, a couple of years ago, we thought, maybe the usual leading edge adopters like, digital businesses or technology businesses or financial services would be at the front end of it. They kind of were, but I think quickly from there, I talked about the growth spurt in the last 12 months. In that growth spurt, we've seen a lot of horizontal adoption. One of the panelists today was from TTX,
Yep.
not a high-tech company, not a digital business. It's a very traditional business, and they're using predictive forecasting for a very meat and potatoes type of use case. They are forecasting maintenance expenses for their railroad cars.
Right.
So that's a very down the middle kind of use case. We're seeing adoption in retail businesses, in healthcare businesses, educational institutions. Of course, we are seeing it in high-tech businesses, in manufacturing businesses, in financial services. But some larger financial services organizations have a bigger bar in terms of getting over all of these security concerns and so on. Whereas some of the other industries, like the manufacturing or more traditional businesses, they're saying, look, as long as it's dealt with by Oracle, Oracle is a certified vendor, we are good to go.
Sure.
As long as we are not doing anything that's trying to go across Oracle and some other systems, if it's all contained within Oracle, you're certified to go kind of thing. Whereas in financial services, given the nature of their data, given the nature of what they do, even the scope of work is within one vendor's sort of ecosystem, they still have to go through a lot of those in-house security evaluations and clearances and all of that. So that may, in certain cases, slow them down a bit. But back to your original question, it's fairly horizontal. It's across the board.
Okay.
And we've been surprised by it as well.
Yeah.
We initially thought there would be some early adopters and there'll be a majority of people that'll be waiting and watching kind of thing. That was kind of true in the early days, but I think in the last year, I think people are just getting past that.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the competitive landscape and how Oracle differentiates against, because you said this earlier, every vendor has AI on their slides, they all have a strategy. How do you differentiate what Oracle's doing, especially around finance and accounting, versus some of the competition out there?
Yeah. I mean, some of it really comes down to our DNA. We've been in this business for a long time, and we know finance, we get finance, and our software builds financial intelligence as a core element of everything we do. And we apply that to the AI capabilities that we bring to the table, right? That's a very important differentiation. The second one is what we talked about earlier. We're not approaching AI as an interesting bolt-on capability. We are approaching AI as a fundamental enabler of change through our software. That's why we took the decision to build it into the platform, build it as a core capability, which means all of the finance context is very important, the application context is very important, the user context is very important. So if you look at some of our smaller competitors, they don't have the wherewithal to build all of this in-house. They need to go out. They need to go get forecasting capabilities from AWS or Google Cloud or somebody like that, which is fine. I mean, those are fine companies. They build fine capabilities, but you're put in a position of, okay, your application data lives within your application. In order to do forecasting, you perhaps have to find a way to share that information with the forecasting model that's in a different cloud, bring the results back,
right.
Do all of that. And in that process, there are question marks around performance, there are question marks around security, there are question marks around scalability. Are you intermingling your one customer's data with somebody else's data in order to train those models? Who knows? I don't know. there aren't clear-cut answers to those kinds of questions, and that creates a lot of tension in the minds of finance people. So our sort of counsel to finance prospects looking at AI capabilities is, look, the demonstrations may be shiny, but ask these harder questions in terms of how is this built, how is the model being trained, how is security enforced, what is the level of data sharing, what LLM do you use, and how do you know that that LLM is secure and can be trusted with my, because in EPM, we're dealing with aggregated financial data, which often is forward-looking.
Right.
That's, if that gets out, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
And to ensure the security of that data, it's a number one consideration for everybody, to state the obvious, for everybody in finance.
Sure.
In looking at a new interesting technology, don't lose sight of that.
Right.
Ask the right questions to ensure that the other vendors can do that. In many cases, the other vendors aren't in the best position to ensure these things to the extent they need to be ensured, or to the extent that a vendor like Oracle, who has invested not only in the application layer but in the platform layer and can bring the two together, that's our big differentiation, and that's a big reason to go with our AI. Look, just because we are building it the right way, it doesn't mean we are slow. We are definitely outpacing other vendors in terms of innovation because we are larger and we have the ability to make larger investments. But it's not just the innovation or the functional capabilities, it's all these other things that help differentiate us. And pricing is an important element as well, because most vendors see AI as a way to juice up their revenue streams. It's a monetization opportunity. And so they're saying, in the short term, if I can get a 20% bump from selling AI as an extra capability, I'm going to do that. And it makes commercial sense, but does it make sense for the customer? We think it's going to constrain adoption. Which is why we chose not to do that. Which is why, in the EPM context, we believe, okay, FP&A may be the first group within finance that's looking at AI because they are more, the nature of their job is more analytical. But we think, AI is going to benefit every part of EPM, every part of finance. So in the financial consolidation area, we think AI has a lot of different use cases. In financial consolidation, interestingly, we're not only addressing the needs of the business user, we're building capability that will help administrators. We're building capability that will help implementers. For instance, building or writing calc rules the right way is an art. And not everybody is equally good at it. There are certain best practices that even experienced sort of implementers or experienced administrators within a customer, they don't pay attention to.
Right.
So, what we are working on is really, can we use generative AI and our sort of years of accumulated expertise on best practices to help write these rules the right way? So script generation or looking at a script and, for instance, customers have calc scripts that were written by somebody who's no longer with the company, and the person who's in the unfortunate situation of maintaining that calc rule or set of calc rules can benefit from generative AI if generative AI could go through that script and document the behavior of that script in simple terms. So there is a capability that we are working on that does that. Performance profiling is another area where, if something is taking, twice as long as what it should, where are the issues? Again, the skills bar for that is very high. Through the application of AI, we can lower that skills bar. Just like, what they're doing with vibe coding.
Yeah.
Vibe coding is, making coding available to pretty much anyone.
Right.
And similarly, we think, writing of calc scripts or improving the performance of calc scripts is a skill that should be available to more people. Maybe not everyone, but an increasing set of people, both within the implementer community and on the user community. Reconciliations can benefit from AI. Consolidation can benefit from AI. The closed process can be streamlined and made into a continuous process through AI. So we think there is a lot of potential across the board. And if you don't build AI the right way, then you're creating silos within EPM even, and that's what many competitors are doing. They're saying, okay, planning works one way because it's a forecasting problem. reconciliations works a different way because it's a different problem kind of thing. So you have different models, different engines, different technologies to address the needs of EPM. We think that's not a scalable model, that's not a workable model in the long term, because you're creating different approaches even within point solutions within EPM, and that's not the way to go.
Yeah, it still keeps it very siloed that way. You mentioned the vibe coding. I remember using one of the code gen tools out there, and I was able to write a one-sentence, create an Atari-style Pong game, and it took about 15 seconds, and I was able to. I'm curious, are you guys using a lot of code assistance when you're developing the software?
There's starting to be some use of, clearly, there are, we talked about security clearances and certifications and all of that, so the bar inside of Oracle for those kind of tools is very high.
Sure.
Because we don't want our source code to be getting out there in the public domain. So there are internally certified code assistants that are available within Oracle, and they are definitely helping us with productivity, and they're definitely also helping us in areas like testing. Testing and quality assurance is an area that benefits a great deal from these technologies. It helps us with our user assistance team in creating documentations or educational videos and things like that. So I think it's a productivity improvement across the board. Not only in coding but also in other parts of what we do, and many of my product managers are using LLMs to even help them with writing functional requirements. Because they do a nice job.
Of course.
And again, this is not to take the people away from the job, but a good first draft can be produced by an LLM, which can then be refined, and they can LLMs do a surprisingly nice job of speccing requirements both horizontally and in industry specific terms, and that's often a very, very good starting point. So that sort of removes the burden of my product manager having to be an expert in every industry.
Right.
And then we can sort of sit down with somebody who actually knows that industry well and then sort of refine it.
Right.
I think we're seeing the impact across the board.
Yeah, even simple things like the Zoom note taker and AI systems
it's huge.
there. It really just gives you the ability to focus on the conversation rather than having to focus on the menial task. Right. It's a common theme across the board. So one last question as we kind of wrap up here. What are you looking for towards the future? There's so much that is still coming out, that is still being implemented. How does this change the next 5-10 years? What are some things to look forward to beyond this? It's not like there isn't enough already, but how do you get better than this?
Yeah, I think this is going to get real over the next 3 to 5 years. Today we are talking about the art of the possible, and then in the next year, more of what we are talking about is art of the possible will start to become real, and then 2 years, even more things start to become real. The scope of AI's impact within finance will start to become more and more real, right? Because we're talking about these algorithms and these analysis tools helping you with the plan revisions, but they can help you with good plan creation as well, right? So the nature of FP&A is going to change. The nature of accounting is going to change. There's going to be more automation. There's going to be redefinition of roles within the company. There's going to be redefinition of roles within finance for sure. Like I said, this is not something to fear. This is something to embrace because it's going to enrich people's job. Today, one of the customers was telling me that, hey, we used to think of AI as a co-pilot. It'll be a co-pilot, but 3 to 5 years from now, it's going to be a co-thinker.
Captain.
Co-captain maybe. So I don't know. It's I think it's interesting, but a lot depends on the level of adoption.
Yeah.
In order to get there, you need to sort of take the right steps and start putting it to work. And as with every transformative opportunity, there will be some organizations who will do a better job with this than others, and they will gain definite competitive advantage through that process. And our goal is to sort of evangelize this so that more and more of our customers are in a position to gain that competitive advantage through this technology. Because look, transformation fatigue is real, but despite all the transformation fatigue, this one has got legs. It's got real potential to deliver value. So I would encourage our customers to sort of stop sitting on the sidelines and start taking the initial steps to see the value. And again, the value is not the same for everyone, but there's definite value for everyone. So don't be left behind is my advice to customers, because it's going to, if you wait for 3 years, I think people are going to lap you.
Right. I still remember when computers used to be people and not machines.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay, well, Hari, this was great. Thank you so much for coming out and doing this, and we really appreciate all the insight. I hope you're having a great week here, and have a safe flight home, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent, great talking to you.
Thanks.